The key to stopping Baltimore Ravens quarterback Lamar Jackson is different than the key to stopping Baltimore Ravens running back Derrick Henry. But the Washington Commanders got to be able to do both, and they got to be able to do both at the same time all day. We'll break it all down on today's episode of Locked On Commanders.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, everybody, to today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, David Harrison, credential member of the media covering the Washington Commanders for Sports Illustrated's CommanderGameDay.com. You can also find me contributing this season to WUSA9.com's coverage of the team as well. I'm here with you every Monday through Friday. I thank you for coming through for today's episode. To all the everydayers out there, I appreciate you coming through every single day. Locked On Commanders is your daily podcast covering the Washington Commanders. And if you haven't already, you can subscribe for free on YouTube or wherever you are listening to today's episode, in which we're going to go over our X factors to the game, make some predictions, and we're going to break down the three things the Washington Commanders must do in order to get a win over the Baltimore Ravens. If you want to get even more out of the Locked On Commanders podcast, all you got to do is sign up to be an insider today. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders. And from there, you can text me your comments, your questions. I'm going to be sending you my comments. I'm going to be sending you information from practices, games, all that kind of stuff, bonus content, and you're going to get access to our insider exclusive Zoom conferences, which are a lot of fun. We've been doing once or twice a week now for the greater part of the season. It's a lot of fun. So head over to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders today and try it out for free for the first 2 weeks. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. So visit FanDuel.com to get started today. The first must do for the Washington Commanders. So again, every crossover Thursday, we talk about what the Washington Commanders must do in order to get a victory in the upcoming game. And the first must do is not just the first today, but it is the most important of the most important must do's. In fact, I'm going to be so bold as to say, if they don't do this one, they just simply won't win. Like usually it's, if you get 2 out of 3, you'll be all right. But if they don't have disciplined defensive aggression against the Baltimore Ravens, they're not going to win this ball game. And it goes beyond just kind of the normal need to be disciplined on defense, right? Every defense wants to be disciplined, whether it's up front, whether it's in pass coverage, all that stuff, right? But this Baltimore Ravens team, on top of having Lamar Jackson, who's got a pretty good arm, if you haven't learned by his multiple MVPs, is definitely an athlete and a threat with his legs. They've also got Derrick Henry, but they're also one of the heavier play action teams in the NFL. They're ranked 14th in the league in the use of play action because their running game is so effective. That is so effective. And they run a good amount of RPO, 12th in the league in RPO plays as well. So as a Washington Commanders defense, there's a lot of things that the Baltimore Ravens are going to do to stretch them sideline to sideline. There's a lot of things they're going to do to stress them in making their decisions. And this team has got to be aggressive, but they've got to be intelligent in that aggression. When you look at their passing offense, Lamar Jackson has the 4th longest time to throw in the league right now, 3.02 seconds this season. I know there's some stat like PFF has it closer to 4 seconds. It varies depending on which outlet you're using or which stat collector you're using. But the bottom line is, no matter what stat collector you're looking at, Lamar Jackson is taking a long time to throw, and his aggressive throw percentage is second lowest, just to Patrick Mahomes of the Kansas City Chiefs. Maybe there's a coincidence there. Maybe there's not. And his pressure rate is the same as Jayden Daniels right now, 29.4%. Both quarterbacks are getting pressured nearly 30% of the time. So it's a long time to throw, and it's a lower pressure rate, relatively speaking, which means he's either moving out of the pocket early or he's got really great protection, right? We've seen that with Jayden Daniels. Sometimes he's just got time to be in the pocket. Sometimes he makes things move and extends plays. Well, for Lamar Jackson, 88% of his passes are coming from the pocket. So that tells you is that this offensive line is balling. This offensive line in Baltimore is doing a really good job. In fact, PFF has them 3rd in pass blocking efficiency. They've allowed the 6th fewest pressures, and they've only allowed 3 sacks that have been attributed to the offensive line. So the other 2 sacks have been attributed to Lamar Jackson himself, which has only been, again, a total of 5 times this season. Now, the thing about his sacks, right? I went back and watched all of his sacks, and not hard to do, and there's only 5 of them. Only 2 of them came within 2 hitches, right? So you've got the drop back, right? Quarterback drops all the way back, hits the top of their drop. Hitch is kind of like that little hop step, right? Sometimes they move forward, sometimes they stay in place, sometimes they drift backwards. Either way, it's a hitch. Basically, in the NFL, you're kind of told you're going to have no more than 2 hitches. Like if you get to a third hitch, you've already held the ball too long. So only 2 of his sacks have come within the first two hitches of a Lamar Jackson drop, which basically means that defensive are getting really quick pressure, getting into the pocket really fast. The other 3 came from pocket rush discipline and sticky coverage. You hear them called coverage sacks, but there's 2 things that go into that: is that pocket rush discipline and sticky coverage. But even 2 of those came rather quickly after the second hitch. So you got to get in there quick no matter what. It's actually absolutely imperative that you first identify that it's a pass and that you win on your first move, or that Joe Witt Jr. designed some things to blockade some gaps for guys like Frankie Louvu, Jeremy Chinn, and whoever else he decides to blitz on Sunday to get in there. Now, those blitzes or those sacks that came right around the 2 hitch marker a little bit after also came when the defense was in cover 1, cover 3, mostly cover 3. So it looks mostly like the team was probably trying to find deep throws. And of course, if the offense is trying to find a deeper throw, you're going to get more time as a defense. Lamar Jackson has dropped back against the blitz 59 times. He's completed 27 of 47 attempts. That's 57%. PFF has him at 58.5% against the blitz. So right around the same time, around the same numbers, which is 24th amongst 32 qualifying quarterbacks. Jayden Daniels, just for GP, is the 4th best against the blitz with 74.5% completion rate. Jackson also has 2 turnover-worthy plays this season, which is not a lot at all, but both of those came when he was being blitzed. He has yet to throw a turnover-worthy pass when not being blitzed. Now, in this season, Las Vegas Raiders, Kansas City Chiefs, and the Cincinnati Bengals all blitzed Jackson the most, and he had sub 70% completion rates against all 3. They lost 2 of those 3 games, needed overtime and some help from the Bengals themselves and from the officiating crew to win that 3rd game. Dallas and Buffalo both blitzed just 6 times. That's it. Only 6 times all day. And Lamar Jackson had above 70% completion rates in each game, and they won both of those games. Buffalo Bills, they won going away. Dallas Cowboys had pretty well in hand. They did allow the Cowboys to come back a little bit. We'll talk a little bit more about why that happened later on. Only 4 of Lamar's 12 explosive passes have come against the blitz. So 8 of them have come against non-blitzes. So be aggressive against Lamar Jackson. Look, you got to be smart. You have to identify the pass, make sure he's actually got the ball and all that stuff. But once you know it's pass, or if you know it's pass, or if you're just super confident that it's pass, you want to roll those dice, you got to get after him. You can't let him sit back there and hold the ball. Now, the problem with that is against the run, Derrick Henry is eating blitzing teams alive this season. 2 of Henry's best games, one being the overtime win against the Bengals, came against teams that blitz more often than not. And the Baltimore Ravens, just for GP, running 40% gap scheme runs, 52% zone runs. He's rushed against the blitz 30 times so far this season, and 4 of his explosive runs have come against the blitz. That's a 13% explosive run rate. His other 65 times rushing against non-blitzing defenses, he's got 7 explosive runs, which is an 11% rate. So they're pretty close, right? But the bottom line is Derrick Henry is being more explosive against blitzing defenses than he is against non-blitzing defenses. The key here is understanding your leverage when you're the inside guy, when you're the outside guy, because Derrick Henry, most of his explosives are coming on the perimeter. So as he's pursuing that left or right angle and the defense is flowing with him, the defenders for the Washington Commanders have got to understand, am I the force back inside guy? Am I the guy that's going to come up from behind the play and make the tackle? Am I the guy in the middle? There's got to be a lot of understanding of where they are, because it's going to take a village, like it is to raise a child, to collapse a Henry. It's going to take a village, right? So attack him. Don't wait for him to come to you. Don't let Derrick Henry get leverage or get momentum going. Go get Derrick Henry. Bracket him in, collapse on him, and make the tackle. Just like pocket discipline, gap discipline is going to be huge against running back Derrick Henry. Bobby Wagner talked about that with us on Thursday, and then attacking your opportunities. You got to be brave out there. Look, I know Derrick Henry is a big dude, hard to tackle, but if you're a Washington Commanders DB, linebacker, DN, doesn't matter who you are, you have got to go out there and be brave. None of this Trevon Diggs diving out of the way of Derrick Henry while reaching my hands out, trying to trip him by grabbing his feet. None of that. You've got to get out there. Look, man, you're going to get treatment. All right. I mean, it's not an easy thing to ask any human being to do. I get it, but you've got to go out there and do it. So that is the first thing that the Washington Commanders must do: blitz and get pressure on Lamar Jackson. And honestly, you want to make sure that when the run happens, you've got enough attackers at that second level and running down the line of scrimmage to corral Derrick Henry. Because if you get too many guys in that backfield on a run to Derrick Henry, he is going to make you pay for it. Coming up next, we're going to talk about why sticky coverage and why aiming down the middle of the Baltimore Ravens defense are also keys to the Washington Commanders getting a win, overcoming the 6.5-point spread that they're underdogs for against the Baltimore Ravens this weekend. That's coming up on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And we're doing that today thanks to our friends over at Robinhood. Today's episode is sponsored by Robinhood. And with Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5% APY on uninvested cash, receive unlimited 1% deposit bonuses, and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. So sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Again, that's robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply for product specific disclosures. Visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risks. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. Today's episode is also brought to you by Prize Picks. And with Prize Picks, you can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. And Prize Picks is the best way to get into the action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. So sign up today and you'll get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even have to win to receive the $50 bonus. It is guaranteed when you play your first $5. So if you think Minnesota Vikings wide receiver Justin Jefferson is going to go for more than the projected stat line on Prize Picks, go ahead and hammer that line. If you think Washington Commanders running back Brian Robinson is going to have more touchdowns than his line is on Prize Picks, go ahead and hammer that as well. Cook up your hot takes with your friends, win real money this football season when you and your crew run your game on Prize Picks. Download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. Continuing today's must-do episode of Locked On Commanders, breaking down the 3 things that we mentioned on Crossover Thursday that the Washington Commanders must do in order to get a win against the Baltimore Ravens. But again, on Thursday, we talk about them, touch on them. Today, we're breaking them down just a little bit deeper. And the second one is sticky coverage, right? And we already kind of talked about it a little bit when it comes to Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson is one of the least aggressive passers in the National Football League. I mean, he doesn't like to throw in tight windows. He doesn't like to throw to receivers that have defenders around them. And he's also one of the fewest turnover-worthy play passers in the NFL as well. Those two things go hand in hand. So the key is don't give Lamar Jackson a choice, right? And it's easier said than done, right? Like, I just said it, now go do it. No, that's not how this works. So it's very difficult to do, obviously, or else other teams would be doing it themselves. But the Washington Commanders, Joey Jr. was talking to us on Thursday, said he's got a plan. He feels like he understands what they're trying to do, what they're going to try to do. He's got a plan to stop it. He said next time we talk, he'll let us know if it worked or not. And I think it's a very fair comment, right? But that's sticky coverage. These guys have got to be sticky. They've got to stay with these wide receivers. If you're working in tandem, you've got to be where you're supposed to be. If you're the under guy, be under, but don't be too far under. If you're the over guy, be over, but don't be too far over, right? It's a very fine line to wade, but you've got to do that in order to give that pass rush time to get home and try to make an impact on Lamar Jackson. So the other part of this is, look, when you watch the Baltimore Ravens, there's 2 or 3 opportunities every single game, it seems like, where there's a chance for the defense to make a big play. And when we talk about defense making a big play, we're talking about getting turnovers. And when we're talking about turnovers, we're usually talking about interceptions. The Commanders have no interceptions this year so far on defense. They're one of 3 defenses, the Jacksonville Jaguars, Tennessee Titans being the other 2, one of 3 defenses that do not have an interception yet this season, but they've dropped 2 of them. So the bottom line is they're actually not getting their hands on very many anyway. Benjamin St-Juste has 1 drop, and then Quan Martin has the other. They're not getting their hands on many footballs as it is, but the ones they are getting their hands on, they're not corralling. They need to do that. Again, Lamar Jackson, only 2 turnover-worthy plays this season, according to PFF. However, there are other opportunities, whether it be a tip pass, whether it be something else. You've got to go make those opportunities or convert those opportunities into turnovers. Again, the aggressive pass percentage from Lamar Jackson, 8%, second lowest to just Patrick Mahomes. So he's absolutely looking for that wide open receiver. And that's one of the reasons you have that long time to throw. So make him pay for that long time to throw. He's going to hold the ball. He does, he obviously is a very dangerous runner, but kind of like Kyler Murray, he would rather be a passer before he'll be a runner in these games. This one might be a little bit different. I feel like Lamar Jackson might be a little bit more willing to kind of take off, kind of like he did against Kansas City Chiefs, just because of the matchup. He does tend to be a quarterback that steers into the matchup a little bit with his play. Usually it works out pretty well for the Ravens, to be honest with you. But at the end of the day, he is trying to stay more of a passer than he is be a runner. So try to take advantage of that, keep him in the pocket, but also work on getting pressure in the pocket. Joe Witt Jr. talked about teams trying to cage Lamar Jackson in. And I think when you're talking about caging Lamar Jackson in, you're talking about setting the pocket and then just kind of holding it and just, we're going to stay here and just kind of shuffle around and make sure you don't escape on us and run. But I think the solution is, okay, let's set that pocket, but then we need to collapse that pocket in unison as best as we can. So that's going to be a big key here. And then the final must do for the Washington Commanders this weekend to get a win over the Baltimore Ravens, exploit the middle of that defense. And yes, we've only got one defensive must do here this week. We've got one offensive must do. We've got two defensive must do's. It basically just shows you the level of this competition. Look, the Baltimore Ravens defense is vulnerable. Specifically, in my eyes, they're vulnerable over the middle. In their week one loss to Kansas City, and I say over the middle, but I don't mean just pass routes over the middle. I do mean pass routes over the middle. We'll talk about that, but also the players that typically line up in the middle of the field, like your tight ends and even your slot receivers. Okay, so week one loss to Kansas City. The Kansas City tight ends combined for 7 targets, 6 catches, 71 yards. 7 of Patrick Mahomes' 20 completions were thrown over the middle of the field as well. That's 35% of his completions thrown over the middle. And then again, those tight ends, not all those catches were in the middle of the field, but those are players that typically start the play in the middle of the field. So exploit that vulnerability. Week 2 loss to the Las Vegas Raiders. The Las Vegas Raiders tight ends combined for 11 targets, 10 catches, 109 yards. 10 of Gardner Minshew's 30 pass completions were over the middle, 33%. Week 3, they beat the Dallas Cowboys. However, the Cowboys have 13 targets, 7 catches, 100 yards to their tight ends. 10 of the 28 completions came over the middle. That's 36%. And Dallas lost by 3. It's a very competitive game. But an interesting note here is that the first touchdown drive of the game for Dallas, 3 of the 10 middle passes they had in the entire game came on that drive. The second touchdown pass by itself was over the middle of the field, and they targeted the middle of the field 5 times on the drives that led to bringing that game within 3 points. The problem is the Dallas Cowboys started doing that too little, too late. That's the reason they weren't able to complete the full comeback, which, of course, if you're a Commanders fan, you're perfectly fine with. But it does show you still, even in that loss game or that win for the Baltimore Ravens, the middle of their defense and exploiting the tight ends, who, again, typically start lined up in the middle of the offense, was very effective. Week 4 win over the Buffalo Bills. This is the best win of the season so far for the Baltimore Ravens. Buffalo tight ends were targeted 8 times, had 6 catches for 47 yards. 4 of Josh Allen's 16 completions were over the middle of the field, 25%. The second lowest by far. But then the week 5 win versus Cincinnati. Cincinnati tight ends were targeted 4 times, had 4 catches, 41 yards. 6 of Joe Burrow's completions of the 30 attempts were completed over the middle. That's 20%. Cincinnati lost by 3. Again, the Bengals should have won there as well. But when you look at the overall theme, 5 of the 6 middle completions for Cincinnati came by the time the score was 24-14 Cincinnati. So they had 6 completions over the middle of the field the entire game. 5 of those came while they were building a 10-point lead over the Baltimore Ravens. He completed just 1 more after that. And then that pass alone put them at the Baltimore 28 in position to win the game. So again, exploit the middle of this defense. It puts you in positions to win the game. The numbers are just speaking for themselves, right? Again, it's only 5 weeks, so it's not a huge sample size, but it's all we have for this season. And every single week, you're seeing the teams that exploit the middle, the teams that get their tight ends incredibly involved, are having better success. The Bengals ran the ball 23 times for 71 yards. Bills 23 times for 81 yards. Dallas 18 times for 70 yards. Raiders 17 times for 27 yards. Chiefs 20 times for 72 yards. So again, for me, you're losing against teams that are rushing the ball 17 times or more, and they're having 30% or more middle of the field completions. The rush game is not so much impactful, right? Number 1 rushing defense in the NFL, but you have to run the ball just to keep them honest. And when you run the ball to keep them honest, even if you're not being super successful, it opens up, it helps keep that middle of the field open. And again, you look at the teams that the Ravens won against, 25% middle completions, 20% middle of the field completions. And then Dallas is the one anomaly, 36% of the field middle completions. But again, did it too little, too late, ran out of time to fully exploit that opportunity. And that's the reason they come up with the loss. So that's my strategy for the offense. Attack the middle of the field, use your tight ends, use your running game to keep that defensive front honest and keep that middle of the field open for your receivers and your tight ends and your running backs to do damage against their defense. Those are the three things the Washington Commanders must do. Again, the first one, I think the most important first must do of the season, to be quite honest with you. But if they do those three things, I'm going to promise you the Washington Commanders will come out with a win. Who are the fans predicting will win this weekend's game? Who am I predicting will win this weekend's game? That is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode of Locked On Commanders brought to you by FanDuel. NFL fans, you can start this season with a big return on FanDuel. America's number one sportsbook is America's number one sportsbook for a reason. And with FanDuel, when you're watching a game and you're in the middle of it and maybe your favorite team is down 10 points, or just one of the teams is down 10 points, 3 points, maybe they're leading and you think they're going to extend that lead. Whatever hunch you get in the middle of a game, you can place a wager most likely on that game on FanDuel. Just depends on how late in the game typically it is. And you can check out the latest stats. You can view the play-by-play, so much more right on the same page that you're going to make that bet. So you have all the information you need to access and the ability to place that wager all in the same place. And you can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet this season. The Washington Commanders are 6.5-point underdogs. So if you think they're going to win at all or lose by less than 6 points, then you can take that bet for $5 or more and take advantage of that $200 bonus bet deal. So take full advantage of the latest opportunity. Go to FanDuel.com and download America's number one sportsbook. Wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Commanders. Thank you, Everydayers, for coming through every single day. If you're new to the program, I hope you enjoy it. I hope you come back. We're doing a lot of fun things here 5 days a week. Locked On Commanders audio and on YouTube as well. Time for X Factors. Time for insider predictions, my predictions. I'm going to give you my X Factor first. I typically do that. And my X Factor this weekend is going to be safety Jeremy Chinn. I think corralling Lamar Jackson as a runner, I do expect him to run. I think it's hard to say more than usual, right? But I think I expect Lamar Jackson to be a more intentional runner, if that makes sense. I do think he's still going to try to lean on his own arm and passing game and take advantage of his great offensive line in front of him, as he should. But I do think that Lamar Jackson, he tends to step up and kind of show out for these matchups against like Patrick Mahomes and stuff like that. And with as much billing as this game is getting, he versus Jayden Daniels and all that stuff, I do think that that's going to be something that Lamar Jackson takes onto the field. So getting that second level attack, getting that contain, and being able to bring Lamar Jackson down early in his runs is going to be incredibly valuable. But then also guarding the intermediate short area of the field in the pass defense and helping stop Derrick Henry. This is a game where Jeremy Chinn's versatility with some coverage. I always say it this way. He's got some coverage ability and really good box ability. I think Jeremy Chinn gets in the box quite a bit in this game, and he has an opportunity to really make an impact if the Washington Commanders are going to come out with a win. So he's my X factor for this game. Turn over to the insiders. Every week, I ask the insiders for their X factor for the game. I ask them for their predictions. And this week, we have another tie. So 2 weeks in a row now, we've got a tie. This week, the tie comes one on offense, one on defense. Austin Ekeler and cornerback Mike Sainristil tying for the most votes from our insiders this week. And insider Mark said, quote, with B-Rob banged up, staying ahead of the sticks will be very important against Ravens rush defense, who ranks 1 in the league. However, the pass defense is last in the league. If Ekeler can find lanes and make a couple plays, that will help the offense stay balanced. Absolutely. We just talked about that. You have to run the ball. If it's going well, beautiful. But even if it's not going well, you still got to run the ball because you got to make that Ravens defense understand we will still not cancel, but we will still run the ball against you. So if you sleep on it, you're going to get gashed on it and they're going to focus on it. And again, that helps keep the middle of the field open. So I absolutely 1000% agree. Mike Sainristil also getting votes and tying with Austin Ekeler for first place. Luke McCaffrey got a vote. He was one of the X factors last week. Certainly made a lot of key plays against Cleveland Browns, a couple in the blocking game, had some receptions as well. Insider Scott says Luke goes over 100 yards with a touchdown this weekend. So Scott also adding a prediction in there. Joe Witt Jr. and special teams coach Larry Izzo actually got votes. So Witt and Izzo actually got one vote together, and then each of them got votes separately as well. So that was really interesting. Daron Payne got one vote, which Daron Payne certainly could be very, very important in this weekend's contest. Insider predictions, the Commanders are overwhelmingly the prediction to win this ball game. I think Commanders fans, you guys are feeling a lot of confidence, which is certainly to be expected. One insider actually predicted an overtime win, so also going that extra mile, predicting an overtime win. The biggest margin of victory in favor of the Washington Commanders, 34-14, a 20-point victory, which would be wild, just wild if that ends up happening. The biggest margin of loss for the Washington Commanders was actually only 5 points. Baltimore Ravens 35, Washington Commanders 30 was one prediction. That was the biggest spread with the Commanders losing. So Commanders fans obviously feeling a little bit of confidence. Predictions this year for me, I'm 4-1 on the year on the money line. So just picking straight up which team is going to win or lose. The game that I lost was the Cincinnati Bengals game. Yes, I picked the Bengals to lose. Yes, I'm happy that I lost that game. I'm 4-1 against the spread. The only spread that I missed was against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I picked the Commanders to cover that spread. They did not cover the spread. This weekend, the Commanders are 6.5-point underdogs. The over-under for total points scored is 51.5 points. And I am, after much waffling, after much internal debate, I am picking the Washington Commanders to come out with a 3-point win over the Baltimore Ravens. I think this is a race to 35. I really do. And I think that as good as the Baltimore Ravens are, they're better on the ground. And I think this defense can do a little bit of bending, not breaking. And if you can do some bending, not breaking, and this Washington Commanders offense can do basically what they've been doing all season long and putting points on folks. Commanders first team to 35. They get to 37. The Ravens get to 34. I don't know if it's a Justin Tucker missed field goal at the end. I don't know if it's tied 34-34 and Austin Seibert nails a game winner. I don't know how it happens, but I've got Commanders 37, Ravens 34, which is a total of 71 points. So I am about 20 points over the over-under on FanDuel. So the odds makers, they might know a little bit more than I do. I don't know. Again, I'm not a gambling expert. I'm not telling you to trust my word. I'm telling you that's what I'm going with this weekend, and we will see how it all unfolds. In the next episode of Locked On Commanders, we are going to be talking live from M&T Bank Stadium. In the meantime, if you got questions or comments, just text me directly. Become a Locked On Commanders insider. Join subtext.com/Locked On Commanders. And for your next listen, check out the Locked On NFL podcast. The Madman Tyler Rowland kicks you off every morning with a double shot of NFL espresso, and then you can roll through the barbershop with Tony Wiggins in the afternoon for some real NFL talk like I do every Wednesday afternoon. It's the all-new Locked On NFL, and it's twice per day. As always, thank you so much for making Locked On Commanders your first listen of the day. Every dayers, thanks for coming through on a regular basis like you do. And until we speak again, if you're out and about, please be safe, be kind, and I will see you next time right back here for another episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.